Hello aspirants and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. In this lecture, we will be looking at the roles and responsibilities of the civil services. More importantly, the challenges faced by the civil services and try to dissect whether lateral entry could be a solution to at least some of the challenges that the civil services is facing. So why is this in news? That is because of the occasion of the Civil Services Day that was celebrated on 21st of April, subsequent to which there was the interview of, or let's say the interview of the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. T.V. Somnathan. Now there is only one Cabinet Secretary of India, of course, you might already be knowing. So only one Cabinet Secretary. It is the topmost post that you can reach through the UPSC Civil Services examination. Right, so you generally aspire for that is the topmost post that you will be reaching. So wish you all the best for that. Let's get started with this news. So in this interview, he talked about the roles of civil services in democracy, at the same time the challenges that it is facing, and also has proposed certain solutions as well for that. So let us get started. First things first, if you talk about the civil services in India, what kind of system does it have? Does it have the merit system or the spoils system? Let's see which system is which. So if you talk about the merit system, basically merit system is the one which consists or rewards the meritorious aspirants, the meritorious people. That means there will be a system designed to check, to test. There will be examination, it can be written, it can be verbal, for example interview, MCQs, subjective. In fact, there can also be the physical test that would be needed. So basically you are testing people in order to ensure that the best of the best get the chance to serve the nation. Now this is what the merit system is. Now this merit system is completely opposed to the spoils system. So what is spoils system all about? The spoils system basically works on the principle of to the victor belongs the spoils. Now this is a very old age system wherein, when wars used to happen. So when war used to happen, whoever wins the war gets all the spoils or whatever was remaining. Now they may not be suitable, they are not tested, everyone else. So from that country, everyone else gets the spoils. So that is the spoils system we are talking about. Now this kind of spoils system existed in USA previously. So how did it function with respect to bureaucracy? There what used to happen is when the government used to come in power, they would not have civil servants based on any examination. Rather, the politicians, the rulers, the governors of the nation would decide who will be serving as civil servant at what posts. So that was the spoils system, wherein the victor of the election is deciding who will be taking various posts of the bureaucrats. That was the system which was in place previously in USA. However, the USA also have eliminated such kind of a system, and they also presently have the merit-based system. And of course, in India, we know that there is a meritocracy system wherein UPSC is the organization which selects the bureaucrats through the examination, UPSC Civil Services examination. So this was the difference between the merits and the spoils system. Now let us see what is the role of the civil services in democracy. In democracy, of course, there will be roles. So let's see what the role is. The very first thing that you talk about is the administration of the democratic system. So the entire administration is carried out by the civil servants. And the Cabinet Secretary also talked about that civil servants are instrumental in conduct of free and fair elections. So in democracy, there needs to be free and fair elections. Only then you can be talked about as a true democracy. Now, China also claims to be a democracy, but is it actually a democracy? Absolutely not. Why? Because there is just one single party, Chinese Communist Party. There might be another party here and there which they would deliberately keep as a ploy just to give a hint of democracy's existence. But no such democracy exists in China, but it does in India. And that is only possible because of the free and fair elections, in which the major part is played by the civil servants, by the election commission, also consisting of the civil servants. Now, if you talk about various other roles, so for example, a case of emergency situation, let's say the president's rule, that is a state emergency put in various states, subsequent to which the particular state comes under the control of the central government. That's when the role of the civil servants becomes even more important, is what has been talked about. Other than that, the civil services is also a repository of knowledge. At the same time, they provide advice to the ruling government. So whenever any policy etc. is come, or any act, any bill is passed and becomes an act, there will be rules, regulations and guidelines which needs to be framed in detail. So it is not the ministers or the member of parliaments who do that. There is a huge amount of help, support, guidance and advice which is present by the bureaucrats. Now, this particular post for framing the law, you won't get it very initially at a very initial stage of your career. You will get it at the mid or the higher levels of your career. Now, in addition to this, of course, various administrative tasks of public bureaucracy will include executing, monitoring various schemes, government schemes, provisions, benefits to the poor, etc., etc. In fact, you have IPS officers, etc., who are patrolling, who are ensuring, let's say, peace and order in the entire country. So these are the roles and responsibility of a civil servant. So let us now see what is the civil services. What are the challenges in civil services? The very first thing we'll talk about here is the neutrality. Now, neutrality as a trait of a civil servant is going down day by day at a very fast pace, is what the cabinet secretary has to say over here. So what is happening? Since neutrality is going down, there will be an increased biasness which is creeping in, as a result of which the discharge of critical function becomes biased and the decision, the execution can become biased. So one issue is the declining neutrality of the civil servant. Now, the civil servant is expected to be neutral so that the decisions are not based on bias, but rather based on the need of the hour, the information, the situation at hand, and what is the best possible solution should be based on unbiased decision. And hence neutrality becomes very important. However, that is going down, is what is suggested by this cabinet secretary. Second, the second issue that the cabinet secretary talks about here is the issue of generality, or the civil servants being generalists. Generalist means they are jack of all trades. That means they know something about a lot of things. However, they are not master of any one particular thing. That means they are not specialists. They are not specialists in one particular domain wherein they can said to have a specialized in-depth knowledge and experience. So that is another issue which the cabinet secretary says is existing in the Indian bureaucracy. Third, there is a significant corruption at all levels of bureaucracy which has been said over here. Significant corruption at all levels of bureaucracy that often goes unpunished. It is going unpunished. So that is why here it's not just the presence of the punishment. It is not just the severity or the presence of punishment, rather the certainty of punishment is very important in this case. Just imagine, for a particular crime, instead of having 3 years of jail, you make it 7 years of jail. Or instead of having 14 years of jail, you make it 21 years of jail. But what if the person never gets convicted? The person gets scot-free because of money, muscle, power. Then it does not matter what the punishment is. It can be very severe, but it does not matter. So what will deter the people from doing corrupt activities is not just the severity of the punishment, but the certainty of the punishment. If you do a corrupt act, and if you know that for a corrupt act you getting punished is almost certain, that's what is going to deter you from actually committing the act. So that is very much required over here. Now, so let us understand what kind of reforms are we talking about, what kind of reforms can be required over here or is suggested by the cabinet secretary. The very first thing he says that India is a democracy. So when the government is formed, we need to respect the mandate of the people, right? So some extent of acceptance needs to be there. That means some amount of intervention might be there by the government and that needs to be respected. However, the neutral bureaucracy needs to be also insulated from any political interference. So there need not be too much of interference of the political party or the government, particularly in the neutrality of the bureaucracy. There need not be too much of pressure on a bureaucrat from multiple sides of the governance system or the government. Now, there needs to be a harmonious balance between the political and permanent executives. So who are the political executives? The elected members. Who are the permanent executives here? Basically the bureaucrats is what we are talking about. So there needs to be some amount of autonomy for the careers of bureaucrats. There needs to be autonomy in that and less interference politically. Another solution which he talks about is a shift in the focus of bureaucrats from the procedures to the outcomes. So presently the bureaucracy sort of works on standard operating procedure. What does it mean? If in a certain situation, these are the steps that you have to follow no matter who you are, in the sense that anyone can be posted on a particular post, they will be following the same standard operating procedure and not worry about what the outcome is. Just ensure you follow the SOP and you are good to go. Instead of that, there needs to be outcome based approach. That what is the best possible solution over here? It might have worked previously, it may not work this time, it may work the other time as well, depending upon the specificity of the situation. Now, even though the situation at times may look the same, it might still be different, hence demanding different action rather than the same standard operating procedure. So we need to move away from the standard operating procedure to the outcome based approach. Now, the second thing is that the cabinet secretary also mentioned that there can be reforms, which these reforms can be hastened or can be fastened by having lateral entrance, especially at the senior levels. So here one of the solution he talks about, wherein we can impose this outcome based approach if we hire civil servants through lateral entry. So he has basically supported the lateral entry over here. So this can be one of the solution. Now, whether lateral entry should be more or less, that's a separate debate. To give you 2 cents on this particular topic with respect to lateral entries, one criticism of lateral entry is that if you have lateral entry, you dilute the provision of reservation. Just imagine that if 1000 posts are there and 500 are being reserved, now this number of vacancies are with respect to the vacancy seats that are available and the future requirement, etc. So if you will be filling a lot of seats through lateral entry, there would be less and less seat through the through the system of UPSC civil services examination. So there might be dilution in reservation. But one thing can be again come up over here is that if you are even having a lateral entry, probably then also you should have reservation. So this is this solution of lateral entry can start another debate with respect to the reservation in UPSC civil services examination or the civil services altogether. Thank you.